Hey guys, it's Brian at Doggett Engines. I'm out in the shop today. Beautiful Saturday morning, working on 351 Windsor. Down to filing ring end gaps, and I got ahead of myself. I got them all done. But it popped in my head. I had a lot of questions about ring end gaps here recently, and people messaging me asking, what's the ring end gap for their 350 Chevy or the Ford or a Mopar or whatever they're working on, and it's not necessarily the make or model that you're working on. It's what is the intended use of the engine. Ring end gaps will vary. It all has to do with cylinder pressure, cylinder heat. Ring end gaps are going to be different from an engine that's running 30 pounds of boost and an engine that's just naturally aspirated. There's different cylinder pressures and heat. So the more heat you have with raised cylinder pressure, the more end gap you're going to have to put in that engine. The whole goal is to gap the rings to where they won't butt up at its operating temperature or conditions. So JE, Wiseco, a lot of the ring manufacturers, they put out minimum recommendations on ring end gaps, and you can Google that. A lot of the ring, when you order your rings, there'll be a sheet in there with the minimum recommendations, and so you'll see on there, it'll say high performance, street, strip, circle track, nitrous, turbo. There'll be different minimum requirements, and a lot of times it's like 4.5 times the bore. You start getting into like turbo and heavy boost, it'll be like 6 or 7 times your bore size. So it has to do with bore size, temperatures in the cylinder wall. It's metal, it's going to expand. So and also you'll know that you'll see on there 9 times out of 10 the second ring they recommend to be a larger gap than the first. And not too long ago there was an accepted practice to tighten up the second ring end gap over the first. However, over the years and testing, it's been revealed that increasing the second end gap actually relieves pressure buildup between the first and second ring, which can partially unload the top ring and induce cylinder leakage. Some high-end pistons will actually have what's called an accumulator groove, and so basically on the second ringland, or it's between the first and second, there'll be a machine groove in between the first and second ring, and what that's intended for is to increase volume between the first and second ring, and that helps ease the pressure between the first and second ring from cylinder pressure and the gases getting between the first ring end gap. And that just helps ring seal. It stops ring flutter. So a lot of times you'll see on the recommendation on the second ring, it'll be a little bit more. It may say it may be like 5 thousandths times bore size instead of 4, and that's just to help in between the two rings gas buildup, pretty much. So on this particular engine, it's going to be just a little street performance engine. So I opted to do 4.5 times the bore size. So yeah, I opted to do 4.5 times the bore size, which my bore size is 4030, and that equals out to about 18 thousandths on the top ring, and I put my second ring at about 21 thousandths. And that's good for just a street engine here for what we're doing. It's naturally aspirated. It's going to be about 9.7 to 1 compression. So yeah, that's going to work out good for this engine. Your engine may require wider gaps. Now, when you go to file your rings, or actually when you go to check your rings, rather, you need to install it on the cylinder bore. And you need to keep these labeled. Don't grind this piston ring for number 1 cylinder and then put it in a number 7 cylinder. If you're putting it in this bore, keep it with that bore. So this is number 1 cylinder on Ford passenger bank. You need to get a ring squaring tool. Summit, Jags, they all sell ring squaring tools. This is a adjustable one from Summit. And you want to just put your ring in there and slide the squaring tool out to your bore size, push it down into the bore, rotate it, and then you can check your ring in gap. And a lot of the rings, just like the drop-in rings, they'll have a ring in gap. They'll actually be over the minimum requirement. So if you get file fit rings, they actually come 5 over, and you'll need to, because they know you're going to grind them to what application you're doing. So, and if you don't have a ring squaring tool, you can put a second ring on one of your pistons, flip it over, slide the piston down in there, square it up that way. I recommend getting a ring squaring tool. They're not that much money, and if you plan on building engines, you're going to need it anyway. So it's attention to detail like this that's what's going to bring you horsepower. It's what's going to bring you reliability, and it's not going to tear up your engine because you didn't gap your rings accordingly. So after you do that, square it up, say, hey, I need to take about 3 or 4 thousandths out of it. You remove your ring, and you can get these here. These are ring in gap filers. Don't stick a draw file in the vise here and try and rake your ring across it. That's caveman shit. You don't want to do that. You want to get you one of these. They're not that expensive, and it actually you rest it up against these dowels here, and that will keep your ring square, and it won't be uneven. You want to grind your rings square so when they come together, they're straight. If you start grinding on one side or the other, you're going to get a lot of leakage and you're going to lose cylinder pressure. So buy one of these. They're not that expensive. So you want to push it up against the dowels here, put a little pressure to the right, hold her down, and you want to grind it in a counterclockwise rotation. If you grind it the other way, some of the molly face rings, you stand a chance of chipping that molly face off the ring. So counterclockwise, and you'll reduce that risk. And also when you get done filing your rings, before you stick it back on the bore, you want to use a small jeweler's file, such as this here, and lightly deburr at a 45-degree angle all 4 corners of your ring before you place it back in the cylinder wall. You don't want to scratch your cylinder wall up after you just got it honed back from the machine shop. So place that in the cylinder wall again, in the cylinder bore. Push in your ring squaring tool, recheck it until you get your recommended ring in gaps. And that's pretty much all that's to it. If you have any more questions, comments, just message us at Doggist Engines. We'd be more than happy to help you. Let us know what you think of this video. And again, watch out for more. Thank you.